Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take the information you provide and, well, really dig into it, pull out the key insights for you.
Exactly.
And today we're focusing on a review you sent over about the Motorola Edge 60 Fusion smartphone.
Mm-hmm. A pretty detailed look at it, seems like.
Yeah, it does. So our mission here isn't just, listing specs. It's about understanding what really makes this phone tick. What are its strengths in day-to-day use?
And, does it actually live up to that mid-range hype? We want to get a feel for the actual user experience based on this review.
Okay, let's start where the review does the unboxing. It mentions this Pantone Slipstream finish. Sounds quite striking.
It really does. The reviewer highlights how it sort of shifts color with the light. It sounds, well, quite dynamic, not just a flat color.
So there's a bit of personality.
Yeah, exactly. Sophisticated, but maybe a bit playful, too. Oh, and a nice practical touch they mentioned. A protective cover comes right in the box.
Oh, that's always good. Saves you buying one straight away.
Definitely a plus.
So staying with design, the review talks about it being really thin and light, but still feeling, solid. That's often hard to get right.
It is. The review mentions 7.4 millimeters thin and weighing under 170 grams.
That is light.
Yeah. It sounds like it hits that sweet spot, feels good to hold, easy to pocket, but doesn't feel cheap or flimsy. The curved glass on the display probably helps the feel, and that matte frame for grip.
Right. And they describe the look as understated yet distinctive. I like that. I mentioned the embossed Motorola Batwing logo, little tactile thing.
Exactly. It suggests it doesn't need to be flashy to stand out. That embossed logo is it's a small thing, but it adds to the phone's character, gives you a little point of contact.
Okay, let's move inside to the display. This sounds like a big highlight. 6.55-inch PLED FHD plus add 120 hertz refresh rate. For someone maybe not up on all the tech terms, what does that actually mean day to day?
Okay, so think of it like this. PLED means you get really vibrant, punchy colors and those super deep, true blacks. Photos, videos, even just scrolling your social feed, it all looks richer, more alive.
Okay, makes sense.
And the 120 hertz refresh rate, that's all about smoothness. When you're scrolling websites, flicking between apps, or especially gaming, it just feels incredibly fluid. Much less stuttery than, say, older 60 hertz screens. It's very noticeable once you've used it.
Right, that smooth feeling. And the review also mentions 10-bit color and HDR10 plus Sambin support. That sounds like, even better visuals.
Yeah, basically it means the screen can display a huge range of colors, millions more than standard displays, and it can show brighter brights and darker darks at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So if you're watching movies or shows that support HDR and lots of streaming stuff does now, it looks much more realistic, more depth, like looking through a window almost.
That sounds pretty impressive for a mid-range phone.
It is. And they also mention a natural color mode, which is good if you find the vivid colors maybe a bit much sometimes, or for, reading. Tone down a bit.
Right. Options are good. Okay, so powering all this visual stuff, the MediaTek Dimensity 8020 chipset, is that a name people should know? How does it perform?
It might not be, the most famous name like some others, but the Dimensity 8020 is actually a really capable chip for this mid-range category. The review says it handles all the usual stuff, browsing, streaming, messaging, social media, very smoothly.
So no lag when you're just doing normal phone things.
Apparently not. It seems really fluid for everyday use. Maybe not for super high-end max settings gaming compared to a $1,000 phone.
Yeah.
But for juggling multiple apps, using maps, all that stuff, sounds like it keeps up really well.
And the review unit had 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. That seems generous.
Yeah, 8 GB of RAM definitely helps with that multitasking, keeping apps ready in the background. And 256 GB is a good amount of storage for most people. Plus, it seems there's a micro SD slot, too, which is great for adding even more space if you need it.
That's becoming rarer, the micro SD slot. Good to see.
Sure.
And at another point, the review mentioned heat management. Apparently, it stays cool even under pressure.
Yeah, that's important. The reviewer noted that even after, long gaming sessions or video calls, the phone didn't get uncomfortably hot.
Good.
And crucially, no sign of performance throttling, where the phone slows down because it's overheating. So, yeah, sounds like good thermal design.
Okay, performance sounds solid. What about battery life? That's always huge for people.
Right, yeah, the battery. The reviews seemed pretty positive here. It's a 4,500 milliamp battery, and they found it easily lasted a full day, even with quite heavy use.
A full heavy day. That's good going.
Yeah, and with more moderate use, you might even push it into a second day. Plus, the charging is pretty impressive. 68-watt turbo power charging.
68 watts. That's fast.
Very fast. The review mentioned getting from 0 to about 70% charge in just 30 minutes.
Wow. Got
Which
it.
is great when you're short on time. Just need to be aware the review notes this fast charger might be sold separately depending on where you buy it, so definitely something to check.
Good point. But the review unit had it included.
Seems so, yes.
And there's another charging feature mentioned, wireless charging. That feels quite premium for this price point.
It really is. Definitely a standout. It supports 15-watt Qi wireless charging, so you can just, drop it on a charging pad. Super convenient.
Yeah, you don't see that every day in this segment. Nice bonus.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk cameras. This is often where mid-range phones make compromises. The main sensor is 50 megapixels with Sony LYTIA technology. Sounds fancy. How does it actually perform?
The review was pretty impressed with the main camera, actually, especially in good light. They talked about really good detail, nice contrast, and importantly, very natural, lifelike colors.
Not too oversaturated or artificial.
Apparently not. Seems like it captures things quite accurately. And the dynamic range handling bright skies and dark shadows in the same shot was also praised. Sounds like it, punches above its weight.
Okay, but what about when the lights go down? Night mode performance.
So there is a dedicated night mode. The review says it does a decent job brightening things up and controlling, bright street lights from blowing out.
Ugh, I feel a butt coming.
Well, yeah, just a small one. Like a lot of night modes, it can sometimes get a bit overprocessed. The software might try a bit too hard, smoothing things out and maybe losing some fine detail, making it look a little artificial sometimes. But generally, sounds usable.
Fair enough. Common issue. What about the other lenses? There's an ultra-wide and a depth sensor.
Yep, a 13-megapixel ultra-wide with a 120-degree view, useful for landscapes or big group shots. The review noted it controls that weird fisheye distortion pretty well, which is good.
Yeah, edge distortion can be bad on ultra-wides.
Exactly, and sharpness towards the edges was apparently decent too. Then there's a 2-megapixel depth sensor, mainly there to help with portrait shots, blurring the background.
How well does that work, the background blur effect?
The review found it generally did a good job separating the person from the background. But occasionally it could struggle with trippy edges, like fine strands of hair. Sometimes the blur might look a little bit unnatural right around those complex bits.
Okay, another common challenge. And selfies.
Front camera is 32 megapixels.
Yeah, 32 megapixels seems to produce solid results. And interestingly, the reviewer mentioned the default beautification or smoothing effects are quite restrained.
So you don't look like a plastic doll by default.
Haha, exactly. More natural results unless you crank the settings up yourself.
Yeah.
And it does 4K video at 30 FPS with electronic stabilization, which is decent for video calls or, quick social media clips. Got it. Now, something else mentioned was Moto AI features. Is this just, marketing fluff, or is there real substance here?
It sounds like Motorola is trying to make them genuinely useful, actually. The review gave examples like object tracking in video, so the focus stays on your moving subject.
Oh, that could be handy.
Yeah. And real-time language translation that overlays text on your screen. The reviewer tried it with Spanish and French and said it worked reasonably well. Also an AI camera guide that gives tips while you're shooting.
So, less gimmick, more practical assistance.
That seems to be the aim. Not necessarily features you'd buy the phone for, but nice additions that actually try to help.
And the AI extends to the general phone use, too, like app prediction.
Right. In the Alassa Glance widget, it tries to predict which app you might need next. And adaptive battery charging, where it learns your routine to charge smartly overnight. Subtle stuff that should just make the phone feel a bit more intuitive over time.
Interesting. Let's talk software experience overall. Android 14, right? Is it loaded with extra stuff, or is it clean?
The review really highlights that it's a near-stock Android 14 experience. Very clean, uncluttered, not much bloatware pre-installed, which a lot of people appreciate.
Definitely.
Motorola does add its own useful bits, like Moto Actions, the chop-chop for flashlight, twist for camera gestures.
Yeah, those are classic Moto things.
Exactly. Plus Moto Display for the always-on info, and those Moto AI features we discussed. But the key is, they're described as well-integrated, not intrusive. They add functionality without messing up that clean Android feel.
And updates. What's the promise there?
The policy mentioned is quarterly security patches and 2 major Android version upgrades. Pretty standard for this price tier, offers decent ongoing support.
Okay. Anything else? Those little details that sometimes make a difference. Speakers. fingerprint sensor.
Yeah, the review touched on those. Stereo speakers, apparently quite good quality for a phone. Clear sound, good separation, loud enough.
Better than a single teeny
Yeah.
speaker for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the in-screen fingerprint sensor was called out as being fast and reliable. Plus, NFC for contactless payments is included.
Good. And any water resistance.
It has an IP54 rating, so that's basically splash resistance. It should handle rain or accidental splashes, okay, but you wouldn't want to submerge it. Still adds a bit of peace of mind.
And you mentioned the included case earlier, which is definitely one of those nice little extras.
Yep, that simple TPU cover saves you an immediate purchase and protects it from day one.
Okay, so let's pull all this together. Based on this deep dive into the review, what's the overall verdict on the Motorola Edge 60 Fusion? What are the main takeaways?
I think the picture that emerges is of a really well-balanced phone. It blends that kind of stylish, almost flagship-like design flair with solid mid-range guts and some genuinely useful features.
Seems like the display is a real star.
Definitely. That peeled screen sounds fantastic. Performance seems smooth for everyday use, battery life is strong, and you get both that super fast wired charging and wireless charging, which is a great combo.
And the main camera sounds surprisingly capable.
Yeah, that 50MP Sony sensor seems to deliver really nice photos. And the Moto AI stuff, while maybe not essential, adds some thoughtful extras rather than just being bloat.
So it ticks a lot of boxes. The review did mention minor things, right? Like portrait mode edges sometimes being iffy.
Mm-hmm. Minor quibbles like the portrait mode edge detection occasionally messing up, and obviously it's not going to have the absolute peak processing power or the super premium glass and metal build of a true flagship that costs twice as much.
Sure, you expect some compromises at this price.
Exactly. But it seems like the compromises are well chosen. For a huge range of users, students, professionals, casual photographers, people who watch a lot of video on their phone, it looks like a really refined, capable, and just enjoyable package. Strong contender.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So wrapping up our deep dive on the Motorola Edge 60 Fusion, based on this review, we're seeing a stylish phone with a top-notch display for its class, really smooth everyday performance, great battery features, both fast-wired and wireless, and a versatile camera setup boosted by some smart AI.
It definitely feels like it offers a lot of that premium experience without the matching price tag. Motorola seems to have hit a good balance.
Absolutely. Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener. When you think about this mix of features and price in the Edge 60 Fusion, what are the capabilities you personally wouldn't compromise on in a phone? Where do your priorities lie, and how does this particular phone line up with them? Something to think about based on your own needs. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.